Hello, family members. I hope you're having a nice day today. Have you ever heard of the power of positive thinking? Or like manifesting? Or there's that book, The Secret, kind of along the same lines. Even, say, prosperity gospel, which is, you sort of believe what you put out in the world is what you get back. There's a huge underlying problem with that ideology, and I think we need to dissect that, okay? So, it can be a very enticing belief system if you already have power and privilege. If you already have power and privilege and you believe that people who are intrinsically good get good things, people who work hard and have merit get good things in life, and you look around and you're like, I've got good things, I believe I have merit, and that circular logic reinforces itself. It's anecdotal, but it's pretty convincing to the person who believes that way, right? And even, I would imagine people who look at themselves as coming from a lesser place could still very easily embrace that. If only my family had their life together. If I didn't come from this backwoods, ignorant family, then I'd have all the good things, and I can be a good person, and so I'll be able to get what I want. It's enticing, and even to those who aren't privileged, it can be enticing. And at its core, it's eugenicist. It is the belief that good people get good things like good health and fit bodies and fit minds. And that's just not true. Good people can be unhealthy or disabled or mentally ill or mentally impaired, any number of things. I mean, if the power of positive thinking really worked, I would not have gotten cancer. Because I can tell you, in the months that ran up to my cancer diagnosis, I did everything I could to convince myself I was getting better, that it wasn't a big deal, that, I was sick for a bit, but I'm gonna get better. It's fine. I'm getting better. I really wanted to believe that with every part of my being. And if it was possible to manifest good health, I would have done it. But you can't. That's not how it works. Which is not to say that, having a positive outlook can't help you heal when you're getting over something. But it's not going to get you there all by itself. And it's not going to keep you from having to deal with tough things in your life, I often tell a story about when my dad was first teaching in West Virginia in the mid-70s. And they had just closed down the institution system where disabled people were literally just sent to be out of sight, out of mind. And that was just the way that things were handled for a long time. That's what, if you had a person who was defective in your family, you just sent them off, and that was that. And for a lot of people, that was good enough. And it was really horrible. It was really abusive. My dad got like hepatitis A, B, and C, I think, working in an institution before he got his teacher certificate, started working in the school system. Like, They were horrible, diseased, awful places. And it was right that the system be dismantled and the kids be taken out of that and the adults be taken out of that. But we never came up with a plan B. We've never satisfactorily addressed in the last 50 years what is supposed to happen when there is a family with disabled people who have support needs more than the family can provide. That's just, you might live in a place that has really good supports, or you might live in a place where you're basically left to fend on your own. And I know there are a lot of disabled children and adults who fall through the cracks, who end up being neglected and understimulated and just given no dignity, no quality of life. And slowly but surely, you see this creep back towards institutionalism. You start seeing more sort of institutional facilities. My little brother just took his son to tour some schools. He's autistic. And I live in the Columbus area, and they went to this one school. It was an ABA school, and it was just horrible. And there were kids like self-stemming. Like there was just, it was a warehouse. It was a warehouse of kids whose adults didn't have the wherewithal to do anything better with them. And so they just sent them there. And luckily, my nephew is not going to that school. My dad was appalled. He would have never allowed that. But what if my brother and sister-in-law didn't have my dad and my mom, who has a background in special education too? What if they weren't the kind of people who would go out of their way to make sure that their son got the supports he needed and wasn't just warehoused where he wasn't going to be of any bother to anybody? That happens a lot. It does. My dad will tell me stories about when when they were, trying to find all the kids who hadn't been served by the school system during the institution period. And they found kids who had never gone to school and were like 15, 16 years old. There was this young man who had some minor physical, or I think it was minor mental impairments, but it just basically been shoved in a closet, a really small closet, to keep him out of the way, to the point where his body had seized up and couldn't move out of a particular position. Yes, I find it very upsetting too, Casey. Go lay down. Go lay down. Casey, go lay down. There he goes. Sorry about that. But, those people tried really hard to manifest not having a child like that. But he didn't go away. And he suffered for the rest of his life physical maladies that were not necessary because of how badly he was neglected. Magical thinking is such a trap because it takes the systemic disadvantages that we have, the way that our society is not responsive to vulnerable people's needs. And we're all vulnerable at some point. We're a society that's meant to work as a collective with all these different disparate parts all contributing to the whole in their own way. It's not always work It's not always tangible things that a person contributes to the society around them. And the idea that there needs to be some sort of measurable contribution that other people can observe from the outside to justify a person having dignity and a place in society is a really dangerous one. I mean, look at Christopher Reeve. You know, he went from being literally Superman to paralyzed. Being disabled is something that can happen to anyone at any time. And it's so strange that given that, people are so willing to allow disabled people to waller and squander. Wait. Waller and squalor. Wallow and squalor. There we go. My West Virginia took over for a minute and I had to say waller apparently. I don't know what that's about. Anyway. I find it extremely alarming how many people who are massively disadvantaged by our current society who buy into prosperity gospel or magical thinking of some sort, you know. I mean, even somebody I know who's very intelligent buys lottery tickets like all the time, almost religiously. If you knew anything at all about statistics, you would never buy any lottery tickets. But, you know, I guess the idea that it could happen is what she's buying. She's buying the ability to believe that maybe she can manifest it into reality, even though statistically there's no chance. We all want to believe we're special. And we are. Everybody's special in some ways. But when it comes to statistics, you know, the funny thing about random stuff is people really have a hard time with random because random means literally every possibility is equally likely as every other possibility, right? So imagine there's 10,000 scenarios that could play out after you do something. And the most improbable one happens. That can still just be random chance. It's like if you take a single molecule of a radioactive isotope, it will decay in a completely random period of time. The half-life of any particular material is based on the average decay time. But any one individual could be anywhere on the spectrum. Could be instantaneously, could be a million years. But that doesn't necessarily mean anything. Just one example of something in a broad population is meaningless. But if the example that you're thinking of is yourself, and you think that you are the one in a million and you deserve all of the great things that you have in your life because you're a good person and you've got merit and you have a positive mindset and you're not letting yourself be trapped by negative thinking, that's eugenicist. And that is you using an ideology to congratulate yourself, say, I don't need to do anything different. I don't need to try to make things better for anyone else because only they can make it better for themselves. You're giving yourself an excuse not to take any sort of community action, any sort of collective action. because you're letting yourself believe there's literally nothing you can do, that they have to do it and they can only do it themselves. And I mean, if you take that to its ideological extreme, you may even believe that it's harmful to help other people. I think that's really where a lot of this like anti-welfare thing comes from, is people literally believe that by helping the poor, you're enabling them to stay poor. Instead of giving a person a hand up, they feel like you're just letting them stay down. Which is a wild way of looking at the world. It really is. And it's like none of your business, you know? But also, when it's you, till it happens to you, you won't know how it feels. Now, I know that's a Lady Gaga quote, but it's really true. Till it happens to you, you don't know how it feels. Let me give you a good example. You're in heavy traffic, and you're trying to change something on the panel, like the temperature gauge or the defroster or something, and you were not paying attention for just a split second, and you end up cutting somebody off. And you know you were in the wrong and that they have every right to be upset, but you also knew that you were doing something you needed to do. You needed to get that defroster on. How else are you going to be able to see appropriately? And so you feel aggrieved at being faulted for this minor mistake that you know that you made for, a fairly reasonable reason. That's everybody. Everybody in traffic who does something that you don't like. Either they feel justified in doing it, or they know that they made a mistake and they feel like they deserve a pass this time because they didn't mean to. When you take yourself out of your perspective and put yourself into other people's perspective, it's a lot easier to see that. If a person who believes in magical thinking could take themselves out of that mindset and really see what it's like to be disadvantaged in some way, disabled or poor or whatever, they might be able to shake that. But they also might just say, well, this one person here is an exception to the rule, which is frustrating. That's how you get people who are extremely racist who have people of color who are friends with them, because they are able to make exceptions in their mind. They believe that there might be some exceptional people of color that are worth their time. They're not like those other ones. They're the good kind. That's magical thinking in a way too. It's wanting to believe that the people of color who don't upset your worldview are a reasonable, representation of black people in general, when they're just not. It's frustrating me, family members, I have to admit. I wish that there was a way for me to, to help people see that we're all just people, We're none of us lesser or more than or any of that silly stuff. I've been calling this out for a bit, but eugenics is really on the rise, and that is really terrifying for me. There's Trump's nephew, Fred, who was his brother's son, has a son who is physically disabled, and who the Trump family as a collective has helped maintain care for. And when Fred asked his uncle for some money for care, as he had done before numerous times, he says his uncle, Donald Trump, said to him, "Why don't you just let him die and move to Florida? Like, you could have a much easier life if you just let your son die. You can move to somewhere nicer than this." If he would do that to his own flesh and blood, his brother's grandson, there's nobody that he wouldn't do that to. And he's the leader of their party. And they want to believe that he gives them permission to be as bigoted as they like. You know, the rise of the R slur coming back, and people talking about how much they're glad they can say that again, and blah, blah, blah. It's a lot. It's getting more and more overt. And I believe it started with this connection between magical thinking and capitalist right-wing ideology. And this idea that you could manifest success being money and power and fame and influence and all of that. And you can't help but see how that idea rose at the same time as this ideology of selfishness, of it's more important that I should be able to speak my mind than other people feel comfortable, of it's more important that I should not have to see a trans person in the bathroom than a trans person be able to use public facilities like everybody else, like they've been doing for decades, and it's not a problem. Like, there is this idea that the world should work the way they think it should, no matter what the majority of people believe. You know, it wasn't that long ago that Republicans really went all in on this "it's better for us if people don't vote" thing, which is a transparent endorsement of the idea of minority rule. If less people vote, we are less likely to have the opposition to doing whatever the heck we want. And it doesn't matter what other people want. It only matters what they want. They believe they can manifest the America they want on the grounds of the America that exists. And people who are disabled, people who are mentally ill, or just deviant from what they want people to be, we're all a threat to their ideology, and so they're hostile towards us. I've watched Christianity be taken over by the sort of prosperity gospel televangelist types, with the big, massive mega churches and all of that. And to me, that is a very magical thinking kind of way of viewing Christianity. It's a very, like, materialistic way of viewing the world. I can't imagine an actual servant of God, someone who really wants to commit their life to serving the community and helping people, you know, find their spirituality in a sincere way, wanting to live in a mansion. Like, I think that people who believe in this magical thinking stuff don't realize that when they break the rules to get things they're not supposed to get, it's not because they're like super special that they thought of that. It's just that other people would have respected the rules. Like, if you told me today, here's $10,000, I want you to invest it in this crypto coin. We're going to pump and dump it. You can sell everything tomorrow for $50 million or whatever ridiculous amount of money. I would be like, no. Because I know where that money would be coming from. It would be coming from other vulnerable people. I wouldn't want to steal money from uneducated or vulnerable people who want to believe that they can get a better lifestyle. Like, no. That wouldn't, even if I came out way richer on the other end, the cost would be more than I would want to bear. It's like all these celebrities having their little coins or whatever. They want to manifest. They want to believe that they can just magically make this money out of nothing. But what they're doing is they're robbing their fans. Magical thinking allows them to believe that somehow that money just comes from nowhere and they don't have to worry about it. Magical thinking is really easy to do because people can make excuses for anything. Have you ever had one of those friends that always had an excuse for everything that happened? It was never their fault. They were never late on it because of anything that was their fault. It was this, that, or the other thing. Oh, they didn't stand you up because they forgot. It was this, that, or the... Anytime that they made a demonstrable error, they were always able to come up with a good reason, a good excuse why it wasn't their fault. They were trying to manifest that absolution. And it doesn't work. What happens is people stop being friends with people like that, you know? Who wants to deal with someone who can never be wrong? If they have any sort of integrity themselves. I know. Weird concept, integrity, right? I'm gonna steal an osprey. I'm gonna steal an osprey. You wanna say hi? You wanna say hi to the peoples? Yeah, there's the osprey. I hope you have a nice day, family members. I'll talk to you later. Don't use magical thinking. Bye.